Hi guys, this is Claire Matara from the Amazon area in Peru, and it's the 7th of March 2022. In the last video I said 2020, so time flies, obviously. I got a little bit tangled up with my pre-COVID time. And COVID did a funny thing to our sense of time and how our life is progressing. So anyway, today I wanted to talk about affirmations, and Louise Hay has been an immensely wonderful and helpful inspiration for me over the years. I've been working with this book almost 50 years, and I found it so helpful, especially when my children were little, and energies we needed to improve something, or they had an accident, or they had some restlessness in the night, anything like that. I would use the affirmations, and it very quickly helped. I would use the affirmations for myself, because in some way they were still in my envelope, the little ones, and I found that they were actually often showing the mirror in my face of what was going on for me. When I was upset about something, they would usually fall over and bump their head or something like that. So it's all related, and especially with your children or your animals that are very close to you psychically, and actually a reflection. In many ways they reflect what you need to be looking at. So I wanted to add this to the list of free healing things you can do at home. Cost you nothing. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, okay, you can go to a doctor. And of course, when you have something seriously wrong, go definitely to a doctor. And I'm not saying that doctors are useless. I have found them very helpful at times in my life, but I found it also really good to be able to be a little bit independent and actually heal things myself that I found I could actually manage by myself. So this is what I did. I want to explain about Louise Hay a little bit more. She's died now, but her legacy to the world, in my eyes, is really incredible. I think that maybe this relates in some level to quantum healing, because we actually heal ourselves on a more subtle level, and go to the root causes that they're talking about a lot at the moment, to the root causes, which are often to do with trauma and the way you perceive certain things that are happening to you in your life. So you can, if a thing may happen that is, for one person it's not a problem, for another person it becomes a big problem. It may be exactly the same thing. I had two grandmothers. They both went through the Second World War. They both lost their husband. They both lost a son in the war. And one of them lost a girl. The other one lost a boy. And it was very, very traumatic for them. But one of them actually got arthritis after that and became very victim conscious. And for another 30 years she was in bed, very unhappy and not ready to die. And the other one was always very positive and did a lot of prayer and a lot of positive thinking. She went to the garden, she worked on her garden. So as a child I found that a really interesting thing to watch the two grandmothers being such polar opposites, and showing me how your attitude affects your life. When I said that to my parents, they were very upset that I would say something that in some ways the grandmother that was ill had the wrong attitude. It was, for them it was like, you can't help that, that's what happens sometimes. And so it was actually something that you probably bump into, where people will think, well, this is how it is, it's reality. How can you say it's only in your mind? How can you say it's only something that you can change by thinking differently? And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's something you can just, pop your fingers and say, boof, it's gone. But for me, especially over the years, it's been very helpful. I found that often I had to find affirmations for something and then write it down and kind of dram it into my head, because I think it's a bit like a computer program where you have a negative slant on something, and then if you want to make a positive slant on it, you have to actually reprogram the thing, because it will run its own unconscious tape, So you find that even if you didn't want to think that way consciously, or you're trying to move on from that thing, it still kind of haunts you. It sits in your subconscious, and you think you can't do anything about it. But much of it has to do with some kind of programming, which may have been happening consciously or unconsciously. So, for instance, I found that I had to write it down. I've looked for the right affirmation in this book, and then I would write it down and start doing something like what you would do when you were getting chores from the school, where where you did something naughty and you had to sit back at the class and write down 50 times, "I will not do this again," or something like that. And I would write it as long as I needed to. So I'd write the positive thing. For instance, I love and approve of myself, or I forgive myself, or I forgive this person. I trust the bounty of the universe. I trust the abundance of the universe. I trust myself. I trust my life. Things like that. I'm at peace. So I would write it, and then I would often look in the mirror and say it. I had a little mirror in front of me on the table, and then I would say that thing to myself in the mirror. So it would go into my eyes like, I'm the teacher to you, but it's myself. So I'm my own teacher, and I'm saying to myself, this is the new reality. This is what you're going to think now, instead of running away with this fear thing. So I would repeat it and write it, and then look in the mirror and say it to myself. And then I would somehow reflect on the gut feeling that I got back from it, Like, at one stage I worked on my mother loving and approving of me, which I felt she didn't. And so I'd write it, and then I would give my little reflection of what my gut was feeling. Like, like I would say, my mother loves and approves of me. And I would say, "Oh, shucks, I feel sick," or something. And then I would say, again, the same thing again, and I'd say, "Oh, I'm getting a headache." Or all the feelings that I would get reflected back from saying that to myself, they were like little cleansings, they were little, like, poof, something bad comes out. So I would keep doing that, and then I would sort of, when I had done it for a couple of days, I suddenly got other messages, like, my mother loves and approves of myself, and I thought, yeah, she set up for me when I was sick with a fever, She was constantly trying to give me clean clothes and sew clothes for me. She was always cleaning the house and making nice food for us. So things that I would start to remember that were much more positive. And before long, my relationship with my mother became a lot better, and we healed something from the past. So it's often our attitude that blocks us from finding something that we want. The same with relationships, where you can kind of feel that this is what men are like, or this is what women are like. Just like a man, or just like a woman, and in that way we're actually stereotyping something, and we're not actually looking at the real relationship and at the real situation, the real person. We're just stamping it and saying, okay, poof, throw that away. So the affirmations can work with that, and what I've said about the writing down and reprogramming your mind, looking in the mirror and saying these things to yourself. So it actually really, really helps to approve of yourself. I did once. I felt really ugly and horrible, and I was saying to myself, I love you, and you look beautiful, and you're really nice, and I said it for a while to myself, and then I went outside, and then a woman on public transport said to me, "You look really nice," So I thought, yeah, it's like what we're thinking in our own mind is what we reflect in the world out there, and people will reflect it back to us. So that is something that may be helpful for people to think about. And I say that affirmations are very, very powerful. They're very easy to do but you need to be a little bit committed, and you need to give it some time, and you need to actually do your homework and write it down. That's what I think is very helpful, because if you see it on black and white or on paper, you're actually starting to imprint it better in your mind. And this is what you need to do, like you can say, I'm grateful for this, you know. While we're repeating in the negative state, we say, oh, I have a pain, and I'm always sick, and I always have a headache, and this always happens to me. So you're actually torpedoing yourself into a negative state. And you can say, oh, I'm so glad I have this house, or I'm so glad I have this friend, and thank you for this friend, saying to yourself or to God or your oversoul, whatever you feel you want to talk to. I talk to God all the time because I think it's so helpful. Because we have a habit of torpedoing ourselves, undermining ourselves, and maybe not everybody, but I think it's a natural thing that has been happening over the eons in this society. Maybe it's the deep state that's been programming us to make us feel bad about ourselves, but we can actually take it in our own hands and reprogram ourselves. So that's the message I want to say about affirmations. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate your view, and give me a like and a subscribe, and also leave me a comment if you feel that you want to do that. It's very helpful. Okay, thank you. God bless. Till another time.